Hello and welcome to the Slackware ARM vlog. If you're new to the channel, briefly, Slackware Linux is the oldest actively maintained Linux distribution in the world. And on this channel, we're covering the ARM port of Slackware, which has been going at this point for almost 23 years. So if you've been following the previous videos, you may have seen, is it in shots? Yeah. You may have seen this machine here, which is one of the original build machines that was used to develop the port almost 23 years ago. It was in a bad state of repair because the battery that was used to maintain the settings in CMOS and the time had leaked, which is very common for these machines. It had leaked and the acid from the battery had spread onto some areas of the motherboard that surround the battery. There are actually two machines, one of which is this one, which I'm currently using to stand the tripod on for the camera. But this is the other machine that was used in the Slackware ARM project, or ARMedslack as it was originally called. So there were two of them, this was the other one. But this one also suffered with the same hardware problem, but this one was beyond repair. The damage from the battery was just so extensive that it's just a write-off basically. Although I have cleaned it up. I've removed the battery and cleaned all of the mess just to, well, I guess, I don't really know why I did that. I guess just to preserve what's left of it. Maybe at some point in the future I'll be able to use it to like cannibalize it. Well, I already did cannibalize it actually to some extent because the power switch for the one that's working, the little plastic sort of holding piece at the back broke, so I just pulled this one out and switched it around. The one that's working is in really good shape is this one, and I've cleaned everything up inside this machine and it's ready to go. So ultimately what I want to do is boot the 18-year-old or so Slackware installation on here and just see how it was as I left it back then. I've been playing around with it a little bit and I'll show you how far I've got. I've managed to get the installer booted. If you've seen some of my previous videos, you'll see that I booted the installer and it just kernel panicked. I've worked past that, figured out what was going on there. And it turns out that basically, because I didn't version control anything back then, the version of the installer I was booting was never even released. It was trying to boot Slackware, or ARMedslack as it was called then, version 10. I never released a version 10. So it was like some really, really old development version. So I'll show you how I've managed to move through that. And I've been able to boot the Slackware installer, so I'll show you that first. And then I want to try and boot the OS as well. So I had a few issues with the installer. I got it booted to the command line, but whenever you tried to enumerate what was on the bus using fdisk, or anything really, it was hanging. It was disabling one of the IRQs, which happened to be the IRQ for this, and that was it. Game over at that point. So I figured out what that was after quite some extensive investigation of basically pulling things apart, and discovered that the problem was that this was set to this disk here was set to cable select. This is the disk that contains all the riscos stuff, which is the native OS. The native OS actually, as it happens, is on the ROMs, which are down there. There are two ROMs that contain riscos, so it actually boots from ROM, but all of the software to get it past the initial stage is here on this disk. And this was set to cable select, and it turns out that the Linux driver just doesn't like it and hangs. So I've now configured that to be the master on the primary IDE bus on this expansion card. So there's no conflict, it's master and there's nothing else on the bus. However, there were another two hard disks, of which this is one of them. Before I move any further, I was trying to ascertain exactly which is the disk that contains the Linux distribution. I think it's this one. So I've put it into this really ancient caddy that you can see is literally fallen apart. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I plugged it in here. Okay, so let's get that in there. By the way, this machine here actually was my wife's old laptop. It's not a bad machine. It's an 8-core Dell Inspiron 13 or something like that. It's got 8 gig of RAM. What is it? Intel Core i5. The problem with this was that the battery was pretty poor. I think it just died after a few years and I had to replace it, and then the replacement broke. And then because of the build quality of Dells, I mean they've been like this for years. I've worked with Dells for like over 20 years and they're pretty poor. like that really aren't. The laptops are just, I mean, it's so flimsy. Whenever I tried to replace the battery, it just like broke, and so eventually this just it just fell off one day, and so we bought a new one. But it's a shame because it's a really good laptop. But I've had to remove the battery from it because it actually was in such a bad state that it actually expanded and created a bulge here. So I've removed the battery, which means I can't. Every time I boot the machine, I manually have to go in and edit the EFI settings to boot from the NVMe. It just doesn't find it otherwise. But it's a nice addition to the build cluster though for the ARM projects. So for those of you who like recycling hardware, I am all for that as well. The same with this machine here. This is another recycled machine that acts as a serial console for some of the Raspberry Pi stuff under here, and also is part of the build cluster as well. So yeah, it's not bad. I like recycling hardware. So let's just switch consoles. Oh, I thought that was Alt. Was it Function? Oh no, that's not it. Okay, don't know why that's not bound, but okay, let's switch consoles. Okay, so the two partitions on there, Linux swap and Linux, which is what I would expect. Floppy, I'll do. Oh, okay. It's making a bit of a grunty noise. Okay. Whew. Okay. Well, that doesn't sound great, but okay, it's mounted. Okay, there's no errors, so okay, whatever. LS. All right, so they've got a Linux file system on there. ARMedslack 12.1, Slackware 12.1.0. Okay, so this is definitely the right disk. Perfect. Okay, I have transferred the hard disk into the RiscPC and labelled it as well, so I remember what it is. Okay, so I'm going to turn it on. The power button is at the front. Okay, so I've connected it up to this monitor here. So the machine has two 64 megabyte DIMMs. I can't remember if they're DIMMs or not, to be honest. Anyway, you can see it says 130, but that's because that value includes the VRAM. So I've managed to pretty much restore this machine to how it was when I last used it. Okay, so this is riscos. It's got my all my old icon sprites that I've modified through the years. This is version riscos 4.02 from 1999. So yeah, this is how my machine used to boot back in the day. The screen resolution is very low though, because this technology is so old, and also it's connected to the monitor with VGA, so there's no way of querying the monitor to determine what, the technical specs and configure the screen appropriately as you would do these days. And the way it works is you had what's called an MDF, or a monitor definition file. And so I have monitor definition files for CRT monitors that I used to use, but I don't have one for this LCD display. I have seen some of the guys that are active in the riscos forums have made LCD monitor definitions, but it depends on the LCD. And I'm not particularly concerned about that because we're going to be running Linux anyway, and it's good enough for what I want to do. So the first thing I'm going to do is download the released version of the ARMedslack installer. So what I'm going to do, if I load my web browser, so what I'm going to try and do, I think I've got internet access. Ping. Yeah, okay, so I've got internet access, so that's good. So if I try going to https://slackware.uk, okay, now I think the reason why, you'll see here it says connection rejected. Basically, I think the problem is that this internet stack is so old that it's trying to use, it only supports probably up to SSL v2, and modern websites use TLS. So I just don't think it's possible whatsoever to use anything modern whatsoever with this browser. There are new browsers available for riscos. I can try this browser. Well, yeah, I mean this OS is so old. A different browser, but I don't think so. It probably uses the same. It probably uses a library anyway, rather. Oh, hello. There are some other options, fortunately. Okay, so let's try an FTP client. FTP. Yeah, that one, I guess. Okay, connect ftp.arm.slackware.com. I don't know if I just. Okay, this is good. I think, maybe. Is it good? I don't know. Doesn't seem to do anything. It should have worked by now. Okay, browser again, try that. ftp://ftp.arm/slackware.com. Come on, you can do it. It's already okay. Okay, that's clearly not working. So. Oh, there we go. Yeah, perfect. So we need to find Slackware ARM. There it is. The version of Slackware that was in the etc. Slackware version file was 12.1, not 12.2. As you can see, there is no release of 12.1, but I had different hard disks with, you know, various different builds of Slackware ARM at the time. So I'll just take the this one because that more closely matches what's on the hard disk. I don't know what happened to these ones. So let's try 12.2. Now, if we go into... Oh. Now that's a question. Where do we get the... Ah. Oh, I see. Okay, that makes it more complicated. Right. So this was when I dropped the RiscPC support. In this version, there is no RiscPC support. I'd moved on to QEMU and the Shiva plugs at that time. Okay, well that's not the version I'm going to use then, because I don't actually have the installer. Right, how do we go back? Is it that one? So let's try, I don't know actually. DevTools. What's in 11.0 then? Bootware. RiscPC. Slack B. Okay, well, let's download the Slack boot zip. Because you just click on it. Yeah. Okay, so that's downloading that off the internet. The reason this is so slow at downloading is because the RiscPC is 10 megs Ethernet at its half duplex. Okay, let's move that out of the way. So what do we have here? Okay, so let's go to here. I forgot that it did that. The icon bar moves, it slides. Cool. Forgotten about all of that stuff. Right, so let's make ourselves a new directory, call it Slackware. Okay. And then copy that into there. Okay, so let's see what we have here. Okay, so there are three options. You've got ARMedslack 11 for the RiscPC, which means boot the installed OS, or boot the installer or quit. So we're going to boot the installer initially. Okay, and give that a moment to boot. So I'm not going to edit this. This is the speed at which it boots. It's actually pretty quick. Okay, so we get to choose our key map. This is in the days before the UK key map was positioned just below the US map. So we need to go and find it. There it is. Come on. Okay. Right, so let's have a look at what we have here. Okay, so we can see our hard drive. So they've got two of them. We've got the riscos one, which I think actually, if we use the Acorn F disk, there was a tool called Acorn F disk that I included in Slackware ARM back then, which understood the Acorn file types and a few other things. Yeah, there we go. File core and reserved. So this is the file core is the one of the file systems on the within riscos. So that, yes, HDC is our riscos drive. So HDD is the Linux drive. Now the thing is that I want to do this remotely rather than at the console, because it's just easier to do it remotely. The problem, well, okay, so let's have a look. We've got Ethernet, okay, so we can give ourselves, oops, we can obtain an IP via DHCP. You can see now, here's my IP address. Do I have GPM here? No. So there's my IP address. Okay, so that works. But the thing is that we don't have SSH or telnet in the installer. I'm pretty certain that we don't, because drop bear was added much later. I'll just check actually though. I don't think so. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, the question is, how do I provide myself remote access to this? What I'm going to do, if I do q mount /dev/hdd2/q, ooh, can you hear that hard drive? Yeah. Oh no! No! Okay. There was an issue mounting it even in a modern Linux installation. So let's give it a bit of time. Maybe it just needs to spin up. Although disabling the IRQ for the IDE controller isn't exactly filling me with much confidence. Oh, there's no less installed in the installer. Oh no. Okay, yeah. But it still might come. You know, it might. Okay. I think this disk has got a few issues. Right. Okay. Yeah. So that's the problem with that, though. So what I might do is just reset. Let's just quickly reset the machine back into riscos. So the disk has spun up. So this is a good start. I'm going to see if I can reboot Linux. And because the disk has already spun up, maybe it will just work. I mean, I'm just winging it here. I've got no idea whether that's going to actually do that. But let's try. Slackware. Okay, let's try again. Let's just. I forgot what it was now. HDD2, yeah, that was it. HDD2/Q, come on. Ah, yes! Yes, it worked. Okay, so what I did was I just pressed the reset button, so I did a soft reset of the machine, so the disk was still spinning. So we've kind of bypassed that problem. Okay, right, so Slackware version. Okay, so this is ARMedslack 12. So what I want to do, maybe if I can root into... Oh, okay, right. So I thought I'd just chroot into it just to see what happens, but glibc is telling me that the kernel is too old. So the kernel for the kernel in the Slackware installer is too old. Okay. Okay. And I guess if I... Is that... Oh, okay. So the binaries... Okay. Yeah, so... Okay, because the ABI is still the same at this point, so we haven't switched ABIs to this version of Slackware. So, okay. I wonder whether... Could I... What about SSHD? Oh, that's because it's in user bin. D. Oh, where's SSHD? Huh? What? Oh, it's S bin, isn't it? Oh, yeah, there we go. Okay. Ooh, wow, look at that. CD-ROM live. Wow. Okay, so if I do Q, okay. No, oh, of course, yeah, of course there's no nano. There wouldn't be a pico either, so just vi then. Okay, so /q/lib user lib. Okay, so ld config. Oh, is that because I can't type it right? Spin. Okay. All right. Right, of course, yeah, of course, because it's from glibc, right. Okay. I guess I haven't got LDD. Oh, we do have LDD. Okay, spin LDD, oh. Spin. What? Okay. Right, so all I wanted to do was just to see if I could start the SSH service in the installer, but that seems to be more difficult than it is, especially when I'm doing it remotely. It'd be a lot easier if I could just SSH into this thing. Or some kind of... maybe... Hold on. How does that function? All I really wanted to do was to just see if I could remotely access the installer, because it's easier to play around with it. And I wanted to do a screen recording of installing it remotely. It's just easier. I'm not going to do that anymore. That just is just too much work, and it just really isn't worth it. But it just occurred to me though, the operating system that's on this hard drive is not a released version. So I don't know. I mean, it's too long ago for me to remember, but I think I was still doing some development on the RiscPC and some on the Ionix, the Capsule Ionix machine. But the problem is I don't have a kernel within any of the bootware that matches the operating system. So clearly I can't boot the OS from the available bootware that's on the FTP site, or that I have locally. I've checked, I don't have anything else different locally. But then I realized, as I was booting the installer, I was looking at the grub configuration. And the way I'd set it up was that the kernel and the installer image were loaded from the riscos file system. They were not loaded from the Linux file system. However, grub does support ext2, so it's possible that grub could have loaded the... Well, actually, no, it wouldn't, because then grub would have had to have supported the RAP IDE driver. RAP IDE card as well, because I doubt... Anyway, let's not get into that. But anyway, the way it is, the kernel was maintained in riscos, but the Slackware kernel package does deploy the kernel. So I've got, actually, if you look here, you'll see Z image from 2008. That's our kernel. What's the kernel for this? It's 2.6. I can't imagine that the kernel would have been built. What? So the kernel's too old, but what version could it? Why would I? It doesn't make any sense. Hold on. So anyway, let me just see. I've got this idea. I don't have this kernel here. Doesn't seem to be available publicly anywhere. But I just had this idea. If I can copy this kernel onto into riscos, I could potentially use grub to boot the kernel. I don't need to worry about kernel module support in an initial RAM disk, because we don't use an initial RAM disk here. This is a monolithic kernel. We didn't even support... I'm not even sure if modules are supported in this version of Linux. They might have been. But anyway, we didn't use them because there was no point back then. You didn't need modules. It was such a small scoped system, these machines. There's very limited hardware, so you just compiled it all into the kernel and made a monolithic kernel. So we don't need to worry about that, which is great. So if I copy this RiscPC image and make it available in riscos, then I can try, instead of booting the installer first, I can try booting the OS first instead and see how far we get. So if I do /pris /pris, of course not. Oh, okay. You going to work, or do I need RPC or something? Probably need RPC. Like I have RPC actually. Okay. Oh, port map. Maybe that might be it. Can't read superblock. Did it? I can see that didn't work. Right. Let's try again. And I'll supply NFS. There is more friction here than I anticipated. Okay. So. Okay. Right. Okay. I mean, yeah. I'm guessing there's nothing special. Oh. Hang on, let's tell you what, let's just replace it with an IP just in case. It shouldn't make any difference at all, but... NFS. Oh, done that wrong. I don't think it's going to make any difference at all, no. Okay. Well, actually, that's a problem anyway, because if I want to do the install, I'm going to do that over... I was planning on doing it over NFS, so... Okay. Right, so how am I going to get this? So the other option to get this kernel is to put the disk back in that USB caddy. Okay, I can't think of an easy way of doing this because there's so little in the installer in terms of tools. In this version of the installer, the new Slackware installers, the latest ones, have a whole bunch of different tools, which makes for a really good recovery environment and so on, but not this version. Okay, that's fine. We'll just copy it off. It's fine. What I'm going to do though is to make the machine actually boot. I'll need to edit the FS tab. So this is HDD, isn't it? Yeah. So if I edit the if I edit the FS tab to, tell you what, I should use sed. Well, before we do that, for posterity, what's the date on the FS tab? 2008. Okay. I know if you're into preserving history, you probably hate me now. I tell you what, actually. Oh God, I give up. Okay, so I'm just going to edit it and destroy the timestamp, but such is life. HDC, what was it again? HDC, HDG, FS tab, cat FS tab. Okay, HDD1 is good. Yeah, this looks good actually. Right. So we should be able to now, once I get the kernel off this machine and into riscos, we should be able to boot the OS, or at least try and boot the OS. Then later we'll boot the installer. Okay, let's power this off. See what happens when you power it off. System is halted. Kernel panic. Okay, cool. Okay, so I've now got this old hard drive from the RiscPC plugged into my trusty machine up here. And I'm going to do it remotely this time. So what I'm going to do is just copy the kernel off here. So A2/floppy. That's when we get to hear the noise again. Oh, it sounds so bad. Okay, floppy, right. Crunch, crunch. Root. So is anything in root direct? No. Okay. So we need the boot, and we want our. Tell you what, let's copy system. We don't need that. We just want the Z image for that. So if I copy that, Z image RiscPC. I'll just copy it there. Okay, so I've booted riscos again. The next step is to get the kernel for the OS into here. So if I quickly look at how this is configured, I've basically opened up the Slackware bootware application. So I'm just going to open the grub config, which is somewhere here. There it is. Oh, look at that, 2005. Right. 20 years ago I did this. Okay, so that's the Z image. Okay, right, so this is what I need here. So let's call that OS. So, and then I want what was it, D. Okay, so I'm going to load a different kernel. I need to download that first. I need to get that into riscos. And the root file system is on HDD2. Okay. Linux back then, and even really now, it doesn't have write access to riscos file systems. I mean, in the latest kernels, it does have read-write access to riscos file systems, but it's in experimental mode, and I've never used it. Certainly back then, you couldn't modify, you couldn't even access riscos file systems within Linux. So you had to manually, well, everything was tied together with the kernel version and stuff. Anyway, so that should do for that. Let's just, don't need to change the title, just save it like that. Right, the next thing is I need to download the Z image. Right, so the easiest way of doing that is going to be using probably a web browser. Right, now on that Dell laptop up there, I'm going to start a Python-based web server in /tmp. So then what I'm going to do is I'll hopefully be able to download that from the browser. So 192.168.1.30:8080. Does it work? Yes, it does. Oh, this is the machine I just did the latest Linux DocTools build on. Where is it? There it is. Save as. Put it there. There we go. Okay. Z image OS. Riscos is not case sensitive, so it doesn't matter about that. Right, and then if I put that in there, I should move that in there. Right, let's see what we get here. Just check. So, okay. Let's see how far we get here. I remember this. When we actually install it, assuming we can do that. Well, yeah, I don't know. I don't remember this problem. The reason why it's saying this here is because off camera I changed the kernel command line operator RO to RW, even though I know it's supposed to be RO, it's supposed to boot read only. But it was complaining before, so I thought, well, just change it. Oh my gosh! So this was... Okay, so Stokely was actually the backup machine. It wasn't the master build machine. A master was Zayden. So actually, I don't know where Zayden's hard disk has gone. So this is... Okay. Well, let's try logging in. See if I know what the password is. I might do. I do. Because I haven't... I haven't changed it in a long time for these machines. Oh, wow. Look at this. So the last login was in 2008. So that was the last time I logged into this machine and booted it up. Wow. Wow, that's quite something, isn't it? Okay. Do we have an IP? It's on ETH1. Okay, well this is... To make it easier, I'm going to connect remotely to this machine. So telnet 192.168.1.152, is that the one? Yeah. So back in the day, I had telnet enabled for these machines because it was noticeably faster than SSH. SSH was around, but I was still using telnet. So let's see. That's my login just now. Wow. Wow. Okay, so Linux 2.6.23.17 compiled at a machine called Dastardly, GCC 4. So it's compiled on Monday the 7th of April 2008, this particular kernel. Look at that. Okay. Yeah, this should actually be read-only when it boots. As I said, I changed it so that it would boot because it was just moaning about stuff. Yeah, I'll leave it that as it is. So we got, yeah, 264 meg memory modules. Wow. Oh yeah, floating point emulation. There was no, this was not hard float. Ooh, okay. 2 megs of VRAM. There's our iCubed Ether H network module. There's our wrap IDE driver. That's our riscos drive. There's our Linux drive. Wow. Cool. Okay. Well, don't really know what there is to look at here. I mean, got running. HTOP doesn't exist, does it? No, it's far too old for HTOP. Wow. Howl! Oh my goodness, Howl. I remember that. Wow. And what do we have? Slackware version. Oh yeah, and I had the sim link here. Wow. Yeah. And I mean, it's pretty much a full implementation of Slackware as well, which is cool. Okay. Ooh, don't have, well, I'll try running it as a root. Where is it called? Oh. Oh, does it not have XSC or something like that? Okay. I'm going to just try and start X on here. I don't think it's going to work because there's no X in it config or anything like that, but I'm going to try anyway. You wouldn't normally start X as root, but oh, it didn't even have start X. Okay, so it doesn't have any of the. Okay, we did have X running though. Okay, so there we go. I think we're going to power this off. I mean, if there's anything you guys particularly want to look at, let me know in the comments. But yeah, let's power this machine off for the time being. Right. So the reason why it doesn't power the machine down is because there's no ACPI. I mean, that was invented long after this machine was made, I think. So that's why it won't actually power it down. It's just halted the system. So back in the day, I would never even run power off. I'd just do shutdown -H now. But there we go. So let's power it off. Okay, well, I hope you've enjoyed that as much as I have. That was more effort than I anticipated, but I didn't realise that there was a different kernel in the OS disk versus what was ever released. So, but we got there. We got it booting in the end. So as it turns out, there wasn't really that much exciting on that machine, actually. I thought it was going to be all sorts of stuff everywhere, but no, there wasn't. But that was the backup machine. It wasn't the master build machine. I don't know where the disk is for the master build machine. It was Zayden. I never wrote on the disks or anything. I mean, I've probably still got it somewhere in the loft or something, but I have no idea. It's not in the other RiscPC that you saw earlier. So I don't know. I think what we'll do in the next episode is I'll try to install Slackware, because the installer, all of that was self-contained and it worked. Otherwise I wouldn't have released it. So we can just start afresh and try that in the next time. Thanks a lot for your support. It really helps keep the project alive, not with the old stuff, but all the new stuff, paying for hardware, electricity and all that stuff. So I'll see you in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.